A single gunshot echoes across the frozen valley, shattering the silence like thin ice under boots. Blood on snow has a way of making promises. Sometimes it's a promise of endings, the final heartbeat of prey. Sometimes it's a promise of beginnings, the first mark in a war that was always coming. They say the mountains remember what we try to forget, that trauma and wilderness speak the same language: survival at any cost. For 6 years, I've hidden my scars beneath layers of solitude, believing distance could heal what time could not. I was wrong. Some ghosts follow you across continents. Some enemies study your exile like scientists watching a wounded animal. They wait. They plan. They know exactly where to place the trap. Now the distant whoomp of helicopter blades carries a message across the pines: the past has found me. And this pristine valley, this sanctuary of white silence, will soon know the color of war. The sun slipped behind the mountains, casting long shadows across Pine Ridge. Winter had come early this year, burying the small town under 3 feet of snow before Thanksgiving. Most locals welcomed the tourist dollars that came with it, but not Lena Chen. She stood on her back porch, watching her breath cloud in the frigid air. At 42, her face had begun to show the marks of time. A thin scar along her jawline, crow's feet around eyes that had seen too much. Her cabin, perched on the northern edge of town, offered a clear view of the contested land, 2,000 acres of pristine forest and untouched wilderness. A hawk circled overhead, riding thermals with practiced ease. Lena tracked its movement, mentally calculating windage and trajectory. Old habits. Just passing through, she whispered. 6 years in special forces, 2 in private security. Then the mission in Syria that broke her. Now this lonely outpost was all she had. A place where no one asked questions, where she could wake screaming at night without explanation. The crunch of snow announced her visitor before Lena saw him. Morning delivery, called Noah, the town's mail carrier. He was 70 if he was a day, with a weathered face that had seen every winter this mountain could throw at a man. Lena descended the steps, accepting the small bundle of mail with a nod. "Storm coming," Noah said, glancing at the sky. "Big one. Thanks for the warning. You hear about the meeting tonight, town hall?" Lena shook her head. "Those Frontier Holdings fellas, making their pitch again." Noah spat into the snow. "Third time this year, like the answer's gonna change." "Will it?" "Some folks are hurting. Tourism's down. They're offering jobs." His roomy eyes found hers. "Good-paying jobs." Lena nodded, not committing. "You should come," Noah said, turning to leave. "Your land borders theirs. You got a stake." After he left, Lena checked her traps. 3 small ones around the perimeter of her property, empty as they'd been for weeks. She wasn't hunting for food. She was tracking movements. Someone had been watching her cabin. 3 nights ago, boot prints in the snow. Last week, a reflection from the tree line. Binoculars, maybe a scope. Inside, she unfolded a topo map of the area. Her 12 acres sat at the edge of the disputed land. To the east, the Black Ridge Reservation, sacred ground to the local tribe. To the west, miles of forest now owned by Frontier Holdings. She knew what they wanted: access through her property. A road to reach the northern valley. Faster, cheaper than going around. Every 6 months, their offer increased. The last envelope had contained a check for $700,000. She'd burned it in the fireplace. Her phone buzzed. A text from Abby. "Meeting tonight. They're bringing lawyers this time." Lena texted back, "I'll be there." She crossed to the gun cabinet, unlocking it with practiced hands. Inside, a Remington 700 sniper rifle, 2 handguns, and a combat shotgun. She ran her fingers over the rifle's stock, recalling the weight of it against her shoulder. The cabin was quiet except for the tick of the wood stove. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and silent as a secret. Damascus Province, Syria, 2018. Sand stung Lena's eyes as she adjusted her scope. The desert heat pressed down a physical weight on her shoulders. Through the crosshairs, she could see the compound, a low concrete structure with 2 armed guards at the entrance. "Overwatch established," she whispered into her comm. "Copy that, Sparrow." Captain Miller's voice crackled in her ear. "Team moving in 5. She watched as the 4-man team approached from the east. Miller took point, with Jackson and Rodriguez flanking, and Tanner bringing up the rear. They moved like ghosts across the sand. The first shots came from nowhere. A hidden sniper. Rodriguez went down hard. "Contact left." Miller shouted. The mission collapsed into chaos. Gunfire erupted from the compound. Lena picked off 2 hostiles, then 3, but they kept coming. Through her scope, she watched Tanner take cover behind a rusted-out car, pinned down by heavy fire. Pulling back, Miller called. Sparrow, cover us. Lena fired steadily, methodically, giving her team the seconds they needed. But Rodriguez wasn't moving. We can't reach Rod. Miller's voice was tight. He's still breathing, but... They all knew what would happen if the enemy reached him alive. What they would do to extract information. What Rodriguez would endure. I have eyes on him, Lena said. A long pause. Clean, Miller asked. Lena steadied her breathing. Confirmed. Just make it quick, Miller ordered. Then get to Exfil Point Charlie. Rodriguez was face down in the sand, blood pooling beneath him. He'd been with her since basic. He had a daughter back home. A wife. Pictures he'd shown her just last night. Lena centered her crosshairs on the back of his head. I'm sorry, she whispered and squeezed the trigger. She woke with a gasp, sheets tangled around her legs. The clock read 3:17 a.m. Outside, wind howled through the pines, driving snow against the windows. The same nightmare, always the same. Lena grabbed her jacket and stepped outside onto the porch. The cold air burned her lungs, bringing her back to the present. Her hands shook as she lit a cigarette, a habit she'd quit and resumed a dozen times. A sound caught her attention, movement in the trees. She stepped back into shadows, eyes scanning the darkness. There, a flash of light. Then another. Someone was out there. Not an animal. People. Lena slipped back inside and retrieved her rifle. Through the scope, she counted 4 figures moving through the trees. Heavy winter gear and rifles. Military grade, not hunting weapons. They were heading toward the back of her property where it bordered the disputed land, where the old access road cut through. She pulled on boots and winter camo, moving quickly. The rifle went into a case along with extra magazines and a thermal scope. The Glock went into her shoulder holster. Outside, the storm provided cover as she circled wide, keeping to the tree line. The wind masked her footsteps as she tracked the intruders. They moved with purpose. Not locals, not hunters. Professional. She found a position behind a fallen pine and assembled her rifle by touch. The thermal scope cut through the darkness, revealing 4 heat signatures. They'd stopped at the edge of her property, looking at something on the ground. Survey markers. They were placing survey markers on her land. Lena sighted in on the nearest figure, a tall man giving directions to the others. The leader. At this range, in these conditions, it would be a difficult shot, but not impossible. She lowered the rifle slightly, aiming at the snow beside them, and fired. The crack echoed across the valley. The men scattered, diving for cover. Lena fired again, closer this time. Private property, she shouted. Next one's not a warning. The men returned fire rounds, splintering trees around her. Lena rolled to a new position, sighted in, and took out the leader's leg. He went down with a scream. One of the others, a younger man judging by his movements, broke from cover, running toward their fallen comrade. Lena tracked him through the scope, finger hovering over the trigger. Don't do it, kid. Stay put. He kept coming. She adjusted her aim, intending to wound. The storm gusted suddenly. The shot went high. The young man dropped like a stone. Silence fell. The remaining 2 men dragged their wounded comrade away, disappearing into the night. They left the body behind. Lena approached cautiously, rifle ready. The boy, and he was a boy, couldn't be more than 20, lay face up in the snow. Her round had caught him in the throat. His eyes, already glazed with frost, stared accusingly at the sky. She knelt beside him, checking for identification. Nothing. Just a wad of cash in his pocket. $1,000 in crisp hundreds. Hired muscle. Cheap labor. As she stood, bile rose in her throat. Memories of Syria overlapped with the present. Sand becoming snow, Rodriguez's face merging with this boy's. Frontier wasn't waiting for permission anymore. They were taking what they wanted, and she had just killed again. The town hall was packed. Pine Ridge had a permanent population of just over 2,000, but it seemed like most of them had squeezed into the building. The air smelled of wet wool and coffee. Lena stood at the back, scanning faces. Mayor Wilson presided from a small stage flanked by 3 men in expensive suits. Frontier representatives. Their leader, a silver-haired man with wire-rimmed glasses, stepped to the microphone. For those who haven't met me, I'm Richard Hammond, VP of Community Relations for Frontier Holdings. His practiced smile didn't reach his eyes. We understand the concerns some of you have expressed about our proposed development. Tonight I want to address those concerns directly. A PowerPoint flickered to life behind him. Artist renderings of a gleaming resort complex. Restaurants, shopping, a gondola stretching up the mountainside. 200 permanent jobs, Hammond continued, plus construction work, average salary $52,000, full benefits. A murmur ran through the crowd. In a town where the median income hovered around $35,000, the numbers were designed to impress. Additionally, we're pledging $10 million toward community improvements, roads, schools, a new medical center. From her position, Lena could see heads nodding. The crowd was warming to him. What about the environmental impact? Someone called out. Excellent question, Hammond replied smoothly. We've commissioned an independent study. He clicked to a new slide. Our development will affect less than 5% of the total wilderness area. We're setting aside 300 acres as a permanent nature preserve. Abby Whitehorse stood up. At 35, she was the youngest member of the tribal council. That land is sacred to our people, she said. The Northern Valley contains burial grounds dating back centuries. Hammond's smile tightened. Ms. Whitehorse, we've had multiple archaeological surveys conducted. No evidence of burial sites was found in our development area. Your surveys were incomplete, Abby countered. We've provided documentation, which we've reviewed thoroughly, Hammond interrupted. Now if we could move on. Lena watched the exchange, noting the faces of those who nodded with Hammond versus those who frowned. The town was dividing fault lines forming around money versus heritage, jobs versus preservation. After the presentation came the vote. Not binding, just a show of community support or opposition. Lena raised her hand with the opposition, but they were outnumbered, nearly 2-1. As the crowd dispersed, Lena made her way to Abby. They're already moving, she said quietly. Last night, armed men on my property. Abby's eyes widened. Are you sure? I'm sure. Did you call the sheriff? Lena hesitated. There were complications. Understanding dawned on Abby's face. Oh, God, what happened? One of them didn't make it. Lena's voice was flat. Young kid, probably didn't even know what he was getting into. Jesus, Lena. I buried him, up on the North Ridge. Abby ran a hand through her hair. This changes everything. We need to go to the authorities. And tell them that I shot a trespasser, that there's a body on my property. Lena shook her head. I'm already on thin ice in this town. Former military with PTSD. The loner up on the hill. They'll lock me up and Frontier will get exactly what they want. So what do we do? Before Lena could answer, a deep voice interrupted. Ms. Chen, a moment of your time. They turned to find an older man watching them, tall and broad-shouldered, with salt and pepper hair and the bearing of someone used to authority. Behind him stood Hammond and another executive. Ms. Chen, allow me to introduce myself. Arthur Blackwood, CEO of Frontier Holdings. He extended his hand. Lena didn't take it. I understand you've been resistant to our offers. Not interested, Lena said flatly. Perhaps we could discuss this privately. His eyes flicked to Abby, then back. I believe we might find common ground. I doubt that. Blackwood smiled. A predator's smile, all teeth and no warmth. You might be surprised. Something about him nagged at Lena's memory. The voice, perhaps, or the way he held himself. I've had a cabin reserved at the lodge, he continued. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. I'd like you to join me for breakfast. Lena was about to refuse when the second executive stepped forward. Time seemed to stop as a recognition hit her like a physical blow. James Caldwell, former CIA handler, the man who had set up the Syria operation, who had assured them the intelligence was solid, who had disappeared after everything went to hell, leaving her team to take the fall, the man whose actions had resulted in Rodriguez's death. Caldwell smiled thinly. Hello, Sparrow. It's been a while. The room tilted. Memories crashed over Lena like a wave. The ambush, the gunfire, Rodriguez face down in the sand. You know each other? Blackwood asked, seemingly surprised. Ms. Chen worked for a security contractor we used briefly, Caldwell said smoothly. Ancient history. Lena found her voice. What are you doing here? Same as you, apparently. Small world. Caldwell's eyes were cold. I'm handling security for Frontier's new development. Lots of valuable equipment. Needs protection. The implication hung in the air between them. 9 a.m. tomorrow, Blackwood repeated. We have much to discuss, Ms. Chen. As they walked away, Lena turned to Abby, her face pale. I need to go. Now. Who was that man? The security guy. Someone who should be dead. Lena's voice was barely audible. And who probably thinks the same about me. Back at her cabin, Lena pulled out a locked metal case from beneath her bed. Inside passports, cash, and a burner phone she hadn't activated in years. The essentials for someone who might need to disappear quickly. Her hands hovered over the contents. She could be gone by morning. New identity, new start. Leave this mess behind. But something held her back. This land had healed her, or at least begun to. The thought of Frontier tearing it apart, of Caldwell, watching it happen, made something twist inside her. The burner phone, when she powered it up, showed one saved message from 3 years ago. From Miller, her former captain. If you ever need me, I'm there. No questions asked. Her finger hovered over the call button. Instead, she opened her laptop and began searching for information on Frontier Holdings. On Blackwood, on Caldwell. A pattern emerged. Disputed developments in remote areas. Environmental violations dismissed on technicalities. Indigenous claims overruled. And something else. A subsidiary specializing in mineral extraction. Rare earth elements used in electronics. A geological survey of the Northern Valley from 5 years ago, buried in public records. Preliminary findings of significant deposits. This wasn't about a resort. It was about what lay beneath the land. As dawn broke, Lena's phone buzzed with a message from an encrypted number. Recognized your visitor on local news. Dangerous. Call me. Before she could respond, another notification appeared, an email from an anonymous account. The subject line, thought you might find this interesting. Attached was a surveillance photo of her cabin, time-stamped 2 years ago, and a single line of text. We've been watching you for quite some time, Sparrow. Lena stared at the screen, the implication sinking in. Caldwell hadn't just found her by coincidence. He'd known she was here all along. She was never free, just a bird in a larger cage. The Timberline Lodge sat at the base of the mountain, its rustic luxury a stark contrast to the surrounding wilderness. Lena parked her truck between a Range Rover and a Mercedes, feeling distinctly out of place. Inside, a hostess directed her to a private dining room. Blackwood waited alone, seated at a table by a window overlooking the snow-covered slopes. Ms. Chen, right on time. He gestured to the chair across from him. Please join me. Lena remained standing. Where's Caldwell? Attending to other matters. Blackwood's smile was practiced. I thought we might speak more freely without him. Not interested in anything you have to say. Please. He gestured again to the chair. Hear me out. Then you're free to go. Reluctantly, Lena sat. A server appeared with coffee. Beautiful view, isn't it? Blackwood nodded toward the window. I grew up in a place like this, northern Montana. My father was a logger, taught me to respect the land even as we made our living from it. Spare me the backstory, Blackwood chuckled. Direct. I appreciate that. He slid a folder across the table. Our final offer. $1.2 million for your property, well above market value. Still not interested? I thought you might say that. He leaned forward. Which is why I'm prepared to add something more valuable than money. Information. Lena's eyes narrowed. About Syria, Blackwood continued. About what really happened there. About why your team was set up to fail. The air seemed to leave the room. What do you know about that? More than you might expect. Caldwell worked for me even then through a series of shell companies. He was overzealous in his methods, I admit. The operation went beyond parameters. Beyond parameters, Lena's voice was dangerously quiet. 4 men died. And you survived. Disappeared quite effectively. Blackwood sipped his coffee. Until we found you here living under your own name. Careless. You've been watching me. For about 2 years now. He nodded. Initially as a security precaution. Then out of professional curiosity, how someone with your training adapts to civilian life. Isolated, self-sufficient, he gestured vaguely. A sort of humanitarian experiment in the wild, you might say. Revulsion washed over Lena. You're insane. I'm a businessman, one who values useful assets. His gaze hardened. And eliminates liabilities. The threat hung in the air between them. We're moving forward with the development, Ms. Chen, with or without your cooperation. The vote last night gave us the local support we need. The permits will follow. There are still legal challenges. The tribal council will be overruled. Progress marches on. He closed the folder. Take the offer. Start fresh somewhere else. Or stay and face what's coming. Is that what you told the kid who died on my property? Something flickered in Blackwood's eyes. Surprise quickly masked. I don't know what you're talking about. Armed men. My land. 2 nights ago. Lena leaned forward. One didn't make it home. If trespassers were on your property, that's a matter for local law enforcement. Trespassers with military-grade weapons, placing survey markers. She stood. Your move was sloppy, Blackwood. And yours was predictable, he countered. Always the soldier, even out of uniform. Lena turned to leave. One more thing, Blackwood called after her. That boy you mentioned, his name was Eric. 22. Former foster kid with a record. No family to speak of. His smile was cold. No one to miss him. The words hit Lena like a physical blow. She left without responding, hands trembling with rage. Outside, the morning sun glinted off fresh snow. Tourists milled about, oblivious to the war being waged beneath the surface of their idyllic vacation. As she reached her truck, a man detached himself from the shadows of the building. Ms. Chen, he was tall and lean with intelligent eyes and the watchful posture of a man who'd seen combat. Early 40s, she guessed. Dark hair peppered with gray at the temples. Daniel West, he introduced himself. And I'd like to talk to you about Frontier Holdings. Not interested. I think you will be. He held up a small flash drive. I have information about what they're really after. Lena studied him. Who are you? Environmental investigator. I've been tracking Frontier for 3 years. He glanced around nervously. Not here. There's a diner on Route 16. Cole's. Meet me there in an hour. Before she could respond, he walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Cole's Diner was a local institution. Vinyl booths worn smooth by decades of use, waitresses who called everyone Han, and coffee strong enough to strip paint. Lena chose a booth with a clear view of both entrances back to the wall. West arrived 10 minutes later, ordering coffee before sliding into the seat across from her. Thanks for coming, he said. I haven't decided if I trust you yet. He nodded. Smart. Trust is in short supply these days. He pushed the flash drive across the table. Everything I've gathered on Frontier, operations in 6 states, environmental violations, payoffs to officials. Lena pocketed the drive. And what do you want in return? Your help. West leaned forward. Blackwood isn't after lumber or a ski resort. There's lithium in those mountains. A massive deposit. Enough to control the market for EV batteries for a decade. Lithium, Lena repeated. You're sure? Their own geological surveys confirm it. They've kept it quiet, using the resort as cover while they secure mineral rights. He glanced around before continuing. But mining lithium is messy, requires massive amounts of water, creates toxic waste, would destroy the entire watershed. Why tell me? Because you're in their way, and because you have specialized skills. Lena's eyes narrowed. What do you know about my skills? Enough. West held her gaze. Former special forces, expert marksman, someone who knows how to handle herself in a fight. You've done your homework. I'm thorough. He sipped his coffee. Frontier plays rough. That surveying team they sent, just the beginning. Blackwood wants your land because it's the fastest access point to the deposit. He'll do whatever it takes, including murder. West's face darkened. 2 environmental activists in Nevada, a tribal elder in Montana. All accidents officially. All oppose Frontier developments. Lena considered this. What exactly are you proposing? We gather evidence. Build a case solid enough that even their lawyers can't bury it. He hesitated. And in the meantime, we make their operation too costly to continue. I'm not asking you to do anything illegal, West clarified. Just apply pressure, delay tactics. Give us time to build the case. Lena studied him, looking for tells, the micro-expressions that revealed deception. He met her gaze steadily. I'll think about it, she said finally. West scribbled a number on a napkin. Burner phone. Untraceable. Call when you decide. After he left, Lena lingered, watching through the window as he drove away in a mud-spattered Jeep. Something about West didn't quite add up. Too polished for an environmental activist. Too well-informed. Her phone buzzed. A message from Abby: emergency meeting. Tribal Center. Now. 20 minutes later, Lena walked into chaos. The tribal community center was packed, voices raised in anger and fear. Abby pushed through the crowd toward her. They're moving equipment in, she said without preamble. Heavy machinery, armed guards. Where? North Ridge. Started at dawn. The North Ridge bordered both tribal land and Lena's property, the most direct route to the valley. They don't have permits yet, Lena said. They say they do, for preliminary site preparation. Abby's expression was grim. Sheriff's not intervening, says it's a civil matter. Lena scanned the room. Angry faces, frightened ones, a community under siege. Ray's organizing a protest blockade, Abby continued. Ray Little Creek was the most outspoken member of the tribal council, a Vietnam veteran in his 70s with a bad leg and a stubborn streak a mile wide. That could get ugly, Lena warned. It already is ugly. Abby's voice hardened. Frontier tried to bribe council members. When that failed, they moved to threats. Ray's grandson was fired yesterday. His daughter's mortgage application was suddenly denied. Lena felt a decision crystallizing within her. Blackwood had made the first move. Caldwell was circling. They thought they were dealing with a broken soldier hiding from her past. Time to show them how wrong they were. I need to make a call, she told Abby. Then we need to talk about strategy. Outside, Lena dialed the number Miller had given her years ago. It rang 3 times before connecting. Miller? His voice brought back a flood of memories, good and bad. It's Sparrow, she said. A pause. Jesus, been a while. I need your help, Captain. Another pause. Where are you? Pine Ridge, Montana. What's the situation? Lena gave him the condensed version. Frontier Caldwell, the disputed land. Caldwell, Miller repeated. You're sure? Positive. That son of a bitch. Miller's voice had gone cold. You know he was CIA, right? Deep cover. The whole operation was black book. I figured something like that. After Syria, I did some digging. Heard rumors he went private. Wet work for corporations? A long sigh. I'll be there in 2 days, sending coordinates for secure comms. I owe you. No, I owe you. Miller's voice softened slightly. We all do. For Rodriguez. After hanging up, Lena returned to find Ray addressing the crowd. Despite his age and disability, he commanded attention. A natural leader. They think we'll just roll over, he was saying. Like we have before. Not this time. Cheers erupted. Tomorrow morning, Ray continued, we form a human chain, block their equipment, peacefully. Let the world see what's happening here. More cheers. Lena caught Abby's eye and nodded toward the door. They stepped outside into the cold. It won't work, Lena said bluntly. Not against Frontier, not against Caldwell. It has to, Abby insisted. We've tried legal channels. We've tried negotiation. You're dealing with people who don't follow rules, who are willing to do whatever it takes to get what they want. Etched. So what's your solution? Violence. Lena was silent for a moment. There are other ways to fight, more effective ways. Like what? Information, disruption, making their operation too expensive to continue. Sabotage. Abby said the word half question, half accusation. Strategic pressure, Lena corrected. But Ray's blockade can be part of it, a distraction. Abby studied her. You're talking about a campaign. I'm talking about survival. Lena met her gaze. These people destroyed my life once already. They'll destroy this whole valley if we let them. Who was that man Caldwell? Lena's expression hardened. Someone who sacrifices others for profit, and who's about to learn that some sacrifices come back to haunt you. Over the next week, Lena assembled her team. 9 people each with specific skills or knowledge. Ray Little Creek brought tactical experience from Vietnam and intimate knowledge of the mountain terrain. His nephew Marcus was a former Army Ranger who'd done 2 tours in Afghanistan. Abby recruited Sarah Runningwolf, a nurse with emergency medical training, and her husband Kevin, a mechanical engineer who worked maintenance at the ski resort. Noah, the mail carrier, knew every back road and trail in the county. His eyesight might be failing, but his memory was flawless. From town, Lena added Jack Foster, the fire chief, who'd recently been forced into early retirement, and his daughter Ellie, a college student home for winter break, who was skilled with computers. The last member was Daniel West, who brought intelligence on Frontier's operations and connections to environmental groups who could amplify their message. They gathered in Lena's cabin, crowded around her kitchen table. "This stays between us," she began. "Everything we discuss, everything we plan, no phones, no emails, nothing electronic." Nods all around. "Frontier has 3 vulnerabilities," Lena continued. "Public opinion, equipment, schedule." She unrolled a map of the area, weighing the corners with coffee mugs. "They've established a base camp here just off the main road. Equipment stored here. Personnel housed in these cabins. Security patrols these routes." "How do you know all this?" Jack asked. "Reconnaissance," Lena replied simply. "Their security is focused outward, protecting against protesters. They're not expecting anyone to get close." "What's the plan?" Marcus leaned forward, studying the map. 3 phases, Lena explained. First, Ray's protest creates a distraction at the main gate, gets media attention. While security is focused there, a smaller team infiltrates from the east, documenting environmental violations. "I can handle that," Abby said. "Phase 2, Lena continued. "We target their supply lines, delay shipments, create logistical problems." "And phase 3, West asked. Lena's expression hardened. "We hit them where it really hurts. Their equipment." "You're talking about sabotage," Jack said, frowning. "I'm talking about buying time," Lena corrected. "Every day we delay them is another day to build legal challenges, to rally public support." "And if someone gets hurt?" Sarah asked quietly. "That's why we train," Lena said. "Why we plan meticulously. No one gets hurt." "Ekri," the group exchanged glances. Some uncertain, others resolute. "I've fought these people before," Lena told them. "They don't play fair. They don't follow rules. If we try to beat them on their terms, we lose. So we make our own rules." Ray nodded approvingly. "We adapt. We improvise." Lena looked around the table. "Each of you is here because you have something to contribute. Skills, knowledge, courage." "And what happens when Frontier escalates?" West asked. "See, when they bring in more security, more weapons." "Then we adapt again," Lena said. "This is our home, our advantage." By the time they left, darkness had fallen. Lena stood on her porch watching headlights disappear down the mountain road. The weight of responsibility settled on her shoulders. 9 people now looking to her for leadership, for protection. She hadn't led a team since Syria. West was the last to leave, lingering by his Jeep. "You're good at this," he observed. "Command, strategy. I've had practice. In Syria." When Lena's expression hardened, he added, "You mentioned it to Blackwood, at the lodge." "You were listening," West nodded. "Part of my job, which is what exactly you never quite explained. Protecting people who can't protect themselves." He held her gaze. "Same as you." Later that night, as Lena cleaned her weapons, her secure phone buzzed. Miller had arrived. They met at an abandoned fire lookout tower 5 miles into the national forest. Miller had aged since she'd last seen him. More gray in his beard, deeper lines around his eyes. But he still moved with the same purposeful efficiency. The reunion was brief, professional. No hugs, no reminiscing. Just a nod of recognition between survivors. "Brought some equipment," Miller said, gesturing to several hard cases in the back of his truck. "And information. Inside the cases, tactical gear, communications equipment, and specialized tools for the coming campaign. Caldwell's operating through a shell company," Miller explained, spreading documents on the hood of his truck. Black Pine Security, formally contracted to Frontier, but the real arrangement goes deeper. He's a partner, Lena guessed. Major shareholder. His company gets 10% of all Frontier extraction profits. Miller handed her a file. He's brought in a team. 12 operators, former military mostly, some with questionable discharges. Lena flipped through personnel files, faces and names of the men she'd soon be facing. Mercenaries. Essentially, Miller nodded. And he's expecting trouble. They're armed for a small war. So are we, Lena said, patting one of the cases. There's something else. Miller's expression was grave. Chatter about additional resources being moved in. Specialized equipment. What kind? Electronic surveillance. Signal intelligence. The kind of stuff Caldwell had access to in the agency. The implications were clear. This wouldn't just be a physical confrontation. We need to assume they're listening, Lena said. Watching. Miller nodded. Always did respect your paranoia, Sparrow. It's kept you alive. So far. They spent hours planning, prioritizing targets and escape routes. By dawn, they had the outline of a strategy that might work, if everything went perfectly. Nothing ever did. 2 days later, Ray's protest blockade took position at Frontier's main access road. 50 people with signs and banners facing down security personnel and heavy machinery. Local news crews captured the confrontation. While attention was focused there, Lena led Abby and Marcus through the forest to Frontier's eastern perimeter. They documented excavation already underway, water diverted from protected streams, waste dumped in violation of regulations. Evidence gathered they were withdrawing when the first shots rang out. Bullets splintered trees around them. Lena pushed Abby down, scanning for the shooter. Stay low, she ordered. Both of you. Marcus, his military training kicking in, pointed toward a ridge to their east. Up there, 2 o'clock. Lena caught the glint of a scope. A sniper positioned to cover this section of the perimeter, waiting for them. They knew we were coming, she realized. How? Abby whispered. Lena's mind raced through possibilities. Someone talked. They were followed. Or west, she said grimly. He's been feeding Caldwell information. You don't know that, Marcus argued. I know Caldwell. This is exactly his play. She checked her weapon. New plan. Marcus, get Abby back to the vehicles. I'll draw their fire circle west and meet you at the secondary extraction point. No, Abby protested. We stay together. Not up for debate. Lena's voice hardened. Move. Now. As they retreated, Lena fired 2 shots toward the ridge. Not to hit, just to distract. The sniper returned fire, giving away his precise position. Lena circled through the trees, using the terrain for cover. It took her 20 minutes to reach a position behind the sniper's nest. He was good, professionally trained, well-equipped. But he was alone, and he'd committed the cardinal sin of focusing too intently on one direction. She stepped into the clearing, weapon raised. Drop it. The man froze, then slowly lowered his rifle. Turn around, hands where I can see them. He complied, mid-30s, military bearing, the kind of man who followed orders without question. You're on private property, he said. So are you. Lena gestured with her weapon. Communication equipment, slowly. He removed an earpiece and radio from his tactical vest, placing them on the ground. How many others? Oddly enough, he replied with cold confidence. You're surrounded. Have been for hours. To emphasize his point, radio chatter erupted from the discarded earpiece. Multiple teams closing in. Lena faced a decision. She could retreat now, perhaps escape. Or she could press forward with the mission, get the evidence to Marcus and Abby. On your knees, she ordered. Hands behind your head. As the man complied, she used plastic ties to secure his wrists, then collected his weapon and equipment. They're coming for you, he said. Caldwell's been waiting for this. Planning for it. Let him come. Lena checked the radio frequencies, cataloging them for future reference. Tell him Sparrow says hello. She left him there bound but unharmed and moved quickly through the forest. The extraction point was 2 miles away, an abandoned ranger cabin that provided multiple escape routes. Halfway there, gunfire erupted ahead. Automatic weapons. Multiple shooters. Lena broke into a run, staying low, using the trees for cover. She crested a small rise and saw the cabin below, surrounded by Frontier security personnel. at least 6 men with tactical gear and assault rifles. No sign of Marcus or Abby. She set up a hasty observation post studying the situation through her scope. The security team was conducting a coordinated search pattern moving outward from the cabin in expanding circles. A flash of movement caught her eye. Marcus carrying Abby, retreating into the dense forest to the west. Abby appeared to be wounded, blood staining her jacket. Lena's blood ran cold. This was Syria all over again. Her team in danger, outnumbered and outgunned. Not this time. She sighted in on the nearest security operative and fired. He went down with a shout of pain, clutching his leg. The others scattered, seeking cover. Lena fired again, striking another man in the shoulder. Non-lethal shots designed to wound and distract rather than kill. She needed to buy Marcus and Abby time to escape. The security team returned fire bullets whizzing overhead as Lena rolled to a new position. She fired twice more, then retreated, circling wide to intercept Marcus's likely escape route. She found them a mile downhill near a small stream. Marcus had applied a field dressing to Abby's arm, a through-and-through gunshot wound. Painful but not life-threatening. "Sniper on the ridge," Marcus explained grimly. "Different position than the first one. We never saw him." "Can you move?" Lena asked Abby. She nodded, face pale but determined. "Just need a minute." "We don't have a minute. They're tracking us." Lena handed Marcus her spare magazine. "The vehicles are compromised. We need an alternate route out." "The old mining tunnel," Abby suggested. "South Ridge. Comes out near the reservation." "Good, go." Lena checked her weapon. "I'll delay them here, then circle back to my cabin. Meet at Ray's house tonight." "You can't take them all on alone," Marcus protested. "I'm not planning to." Lena's expression was grim. "Just slow them down." After they left, Lena prepared her position, using the terrain to create choke points where pursuers would be exposed. When the first two security operatives appeared, following the blood trail Abby had left, Lena was ready. 2 quick shots, one to each man's leg, dropped them where they stood. Not fatal, but effective. Radio chatter erupted as they called for backup. Lena melted into the forest before it arrived, using techniques honed during years of special operations to move without leaving signs. By nightfall, she'd made it back to her cabin, approaching cautiously through the tree line. The place was dark, no visible surveillance. But that meant little in the age of thermal imaging and directional microphones. She circled twice before approaching, checking for tripwires or motion sensors. Finding none, she entered through a concealed door in the root cellar, an escape route she'd prepared when she first bought the property. Inside, nothing appeared disturbed, but Lena had left nearly invisible tells. A hair across the gun cabinet, a pencil positioned exactly parallel to the edge of her desk. Both had been moved. Someone had searched her home, thoroughly and professionally. She collected essential supplies, ammunition, medical kit, cold weather gear, and retreated the way she'd come in. As she moved through the forest toward Ray's house, the secure phone buzzed a message from Miller. "Weapons cache compromised. Meeting point compromised. Communications may be compromised. Switch to Protocol Echo." Protocol Echo meant all electronic communication was potentially compromised. All prearranged meeting points should be considered unsafe. Fall back to emergency rendezvous only. The situation had escalated faster than any of them had anticipated. Frontier, Caldwell, had been waiting for them to make a move, which meant only one thing: Daniel West was working for Caldwell. Had been from the start. The hunter had become the hunted. Ray's house sat on the edge of the reservation, a sturdy log structure built by his father 50 years ago. By the time Lena arrived, the others had gathered in the basement. Abby's wound had been properly dressed by Sarah. Marcus and Jack were inventorying their remaining equipment. "Where's West?" Lena asked immediately. "Hasn't shown up," Ray replied. "Why?" "Because he's working for Caldwell." Lena set down her pack. The whole operation was compromised from the start. Silence fell as the implications sank in. "You're sure?" Jack asked. "The ambush was too well coordinated. They knew exactly where we'd be when we'd be there." Lena looked around the group. "West approached me too conveniently. Knew too much about my background." "I checked him out," Ellie protested. "His credentials seemed legitimate. Environmental activist. Published articles." "A cover," Lena said flatly. "Probably established years ago. That's how Caldwell operates. Layers of deception, long-term planning." "So what now?" Marcus asked. They know who we are, what we're planning. Nah, we changed the plan, Lena replied. Hit them harder, faster. Harder how? Ray asked. Their weapons cache. Lena unfolded a map on the table. Located here half-mile from their main camp. Minimal security because it's unlabeled, disguised as equipment storage. Jack shook his head. That's escalation. Someone could get killed. Someone already got shot, Lena countered, nodding toward Abby. This isn't a game anymore. It never was. I didn't sign up for a war, Noah said quietly. None of us did, Lena agreed. But Frontier brought the war to us. The question is whether we fight back or surrender. The room divided, Ray, Marcus, and Abby on Lena's side, Jack, Noah, and Kevin more hesitant. Sarah and Ellie remained undecided. There's another way, Ellie spoke up. Information warfare. All eyes turned to her. Frontier's security systems are networked, she explained. I've been monitoring their communications. They're vulnerable to cyber attack. What kind of attack? Lena asked. Nothing destructive, Ellie clarified. But I could access internal documents, financial records, things they wouldn't want public. Do it, Lena decided. But we still need physical action, pressure from multiple directions. They spent the night planning adapting to the new reality. By dawn, they had a revised strategy, more cautious in some ways, more aggressive in others. As the others prepared, Lena pulled Marcus aside. I need you to check on Miller, she said quietly. Last contact was a text warning about compromised locations. Nothing since. Where emergency rendezvous point, old fire tower. She handed him a map. Approach carefully. Could be under surveillance. And if he's not there, Lena's expression was grim, then we've lost another ally. While Marcus went to find Miller, Lena led the first operation of their new campaign, a midnight infiltration of Frontier's fuel depot. With Ray providing overwatch from a nearby ridge, Lena and Kevin sabotaged the fuel lines for the heavy equipment. Not enough to cause catastrophic failure, but enough to create persistent problems that would be difficult to trace. Over the next 3 days, they struck from multiple directions. Ellie hacked into Frontier's internal network, extracting documents proving the real purpose of their operation. Lithium mining, not resort development. Sarah and Abby organized community meetings, spreading the evidence to build local opposition. Jack and Noah, using their knowledge of the area's fire roads, disrupted supply deliveries by strategically felling trees across access routes. Always with escape paths cleared in advance, always avoiding direct confrontation. Frontier responded by increasing security, bringing in more personnel, establishing checkpoints on public roads. The atmosphere in Pine Ridge grew tense as the town divided between those supporting Frontier's promised jobs and those opposing the environmental destruction. On the fourth night, Marcus returned with troubling news. Miller's gone, he reported. Signs of a struggle at the fire tower. Blood on the floor. Lena felt a cold knot form in her stomach. How much blood? Not enough to indicate a fatal wound, but substantial. They have him, she said quietly. Likely, Marcus agreed. Found boot prints matching tactical gear. Professional extraction team. The implications hung heavy in the air. Miller knew everything about their operation, under interrogation. We need to assume all our plans are compromised, Lena told the group. All safe houses, all strategies. So we're done, Jack said. We can't fight anymore. No, Lena's voice hardened. We adapt. Again. To what? Noah asked. They have more men, more weapons, more resources. Right, but we have something they don't, Lena countered. Intimate knowledge of this terrain. Winter survival skills. And nothing left to lose. Some of us have plenty to lose. Jack reminded her, thinking of his daughter. Then you walk away, Lena said simply. No judgment, this was always voluntary. A heavy silence fell over the group. I'm staying, Ray declared first. This is my home, my people's land. Worth fighting for. Me too, Abby nodded despite her injured arm. One by one, the others committed. Some wholeheartedly, others with reservation. Only Noah opted to withdraw, citing his age and responsibilities to the community. So what's the new plan? Marcus asked. We take the fight directly to them, Lena said. Their primary objective is in the Northern Valley, the lithium deposit. We make that area so dangerous, so costly to operate in, that they're forced to reconsider. Guerrilla warfare. Ray nodded approvingly. Like we did in Nam. Exactly. Lena turned to the map. We set up a base here in the old hunting cabin. Stage operations from there. Focus on their equipment, their logistics. Make it impossible for them to work. The new strategy worked, at first. Using techniques Lena had learned in Special Forces, they created an environment of constant uncertainty for Frontier's operation. Equipment malfunctioned. Communications failed. Supply routes became hazardous. Caldwell responded by bringing in more security personnel, establishing a militarized perimeter around the primary work sites. The confrontation escalated day by day, a war in miniature playing out in the Montana wilderness. Then came the counterstrike. It began with Kevin's truck exploding in the hardware store parking lot. A professional job, C4 with a remote detonator. Kevin wasn't in the vehicle, but the message was clear. Frontier knew who was opposing them and could strike anywhere. The next day, Ray's grandson was beaten by unknown assailants outside the high school. The day after that, Jack's house was broken into, his service weapon stolen. The pressure built. Community support wavered as fear spread. The local sheriff, compromised by Frontier's influence, looked the other way. Lena gathered the core team at the hunting cabin to reassess. This can't continue, Jack said, visibly shaken by the invasion of his home. They're targeting our families now. They're trying to break us, Lena acknowledged. Make us give up. Maybe we should, Sarah suggested quietly, before someone gets killed. People will die either way, Ray argued. If Frontier gets that lithium deposit, the environmental damage will destroy this valley. The water, the wildlife, the land, all poisoned. There has to be another way, Abby said. Legal challenges, media attention. We've tried those, Marcus reminded her. Frontier's lawyers have delayed every court hearing. Their PR team has controlled the narrative in the press. The debate continued into the night, fracturing the group's unity. By morning, no consensus had been reached. Continue the fight or stand down. As they dispersed to their various positions, Lena pulled Ellie aside. I need you to do something, she said. Something risky. What? Access Frontier's secure server. Find everything you can on Caldwell. Personnel files. Operations records, especially anything related to Syria. Ellie frowned. Their system is heavily protected. Breaking through those firewalls could trigger alerts. I know, but it might be our only leverage. Against Caldwell. Against all of them. Lena's expression was determined. Find me something I can use. Later that day, as Lena scouted Frontier's expanded security perimeter, her secure phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. We have your friend Miller, still alive. For now, come alone to the old mine entrance. Midnight, or we send him back in pieces. Attached was a photo, Miller bound to a chair, face bloody but eyes defiant. In the background, a familiar figure, Daniel West, holding up that day's newspaper as proof of life. Lena stared at the image, ice forming in her veins. The trap was obvious, but so was the threat. Another message followed. Caldwell says to tell you, this ends better than Syria. Your choice how. The reference to Syria, to her greatest failure, ignited something deep within Lena. Rage, yes, but also resolve. She'd left Rodriguez to die in the sand. She wouldn't abandon Miller to the same fate, even if it meant walking into Caldwell's trap. The abandoned mine entrance loomed dark against the snow-covered mountainside. A relic from the early 1900s, its timber supports rotted with age, the surrounding area littered with rusted equipment half buried in drifts. Lena approached from the north, using the ridgeline for cover. Through her thermal scope, she counted 4 heat signatures inside the mine entrance and 2 more on the slopes above. Snipers in Overwatch positions. Classic ambush formation. Professional. Patient. Miller would be held deeper inside, beyond the initial kill zone. That's where West would be waiting, where Caldwell would spring his trap. Lena settled into a concealed position to observe. The security team maintained strict communications discipline. Short transmissions, scheduled check-ins. Their movements were coordinated, leaving no blind spots in their coverage. These weren't rent-a-cops. They were experienced operators, mercenaries with military training. A direct assault would be suicide, but Lena had no intention of attacking head-on. 3 hours before the midnight deadline, she began preparing the battlefield. Using techniques learned from Ray and his experiences in Vietnam, she constructed a series of improvised devices, not to kill, but to create chaos. Noisemakers, smoke generators, flashbangs from household chemicals. She positioned them at strategic points around the perimeter, rigged to remote triggers. Then, using the small drone Ellie had modified, she surveyed the area from above, identifying the power generator that supplied the mine entrance's lighting system. At 11:30 p.m., she disabled the generator with a well-placed shot from her rifle. The lights at the mine entrance died, plunging the area into darkness. The security team switched to night vision, exactly as Lena had anticipated. At 11:45, she triggered the first set of devices. Bright flashes erupted along the western perimeter. Temporary blindness for anyone using night vision. The snipers turned toward the distraction, adjusting their optics. Lena used the moment to move closer, approaching from the east, keeping to dead ground that the snipers couldn't cover. At 11:55, she triggered the smoke devices, creating a thick screen that obscured thermal imaging. Confusion spread among the security team as they lost visual contact with each other. 3 minutes to midnight, Lena was at the mine entrance. The guards had moved to defensive positions, expecting an assault from the west, where all the distractions had originated. Instead, she slipped in behind them, silent as a ghost. The first guard went down without a sound, a precision strike to the base of the skull with the butt of her rifle. The second had time only for a startled breath before Lena's arm locked around his throat, cutting off blood flow to his brain. He collapsed seconds later. Inside the mine entrance, 2 more guards waited, weapons trained on the passage leading deeper into the mountain. Lena took them both with tranquilizer darts. Another item from Miller's equipment cache. 4 down. 2 snipers outside still watching the wrong direction. Lena advanced deeper into the mine, following a tunnel shored up with ancient timbers. Water dripped from the ceiling, forming icy puddles on the rocky floor. Her light illuminated rusted rail tracks, stretching ahead into darkness. The tunnel opened into a larger chamber, once a staging area for the mining operation. In the center, under a single bare bulb, sat Miller, bound to a chair, head slumped forward, and beside him, as expected, Daniel West, handgun trained on Miller's head. "Right on time," West said. "Weapon on the ground, slowly." Lena complied, placing her rifle down. "Backup weapons too," West ordered. "Knife in your boot, pistol at your back." She removed them, setting them aside. "Hands where I can see them." Lena raised her hands. "Where's Caldwell?" "Coming," West gestured with his gun. "He wanted me to prepare you first." "By killing Miller." "That depends on you." West's expression was coldly professional. "Cooperation means he lives. Resistance means he doesn't." Lena studied Miller, the rise and fall of his chest, the bruising on his face. Alive but weakened. "What does Caldwell want?" "First, the evidence you've gathered, all of it. The documents Ellie hacked, the environmental samples, everything. And then you walk away. All of you. New identities, new lives. Far from here. While Frontier destroys the valley." West shrugged. "Business is business." "And what's your cut?" Lena asked. "What does Caldwell pay for betrayal these days?" Something flickered in West's eyes. Anger, perhaps. Or shame. "Enough questions." He reached behind him, producing a pair of handcuffs. "Restrain yourself to that pipe. We wait for Caldwell." As Lena moved toward the pipe, Miller's head suddenly lifted. His eyes, alert and focused, met hers. A signal. Imperceptible to West, but clear to her. Miller had freed his hands. Lena stalled, moving deliberately slowly. "You were never an environmental investigator, were you? Former CIA like Caldwell?" West admitted. "We worked together in South America, Afghanistan, Syria. You were there in Syria. Support team, intelligence analysis." West's attention wavered slightly. "I identified your unit as the insertion team." "Ah, so Rodriguez's death is on you too." The name hit West like a physical blow. We didn't intend." In that moment of distraction, Miller moved. Despite his injuries, he launched himself sideways, crashing into West. The gun discharged, a shot that went wild, ricocheting off the rock ceiling. Lena dove for her weapons as the 2 men struggled. West, younger and uninjured, quickly gained the advantage, pinning Miller with a knee to his chest. The gun came up, aimed at Miller's head. Lena fired once. The shot echoed deafeningly in the confined space. West fell backward, a red stain spreading across his chest. His eyes, wide with shock, found Lena's. "Caldwell! Set us all up!" he gasped. "Syria! Here! All of it!" "Why?" Lena demanded, keeping her weapon trained on him. "Lithium," West whispered. "Worth billions. He's been planning this for years." His eyes lost focus, breath becoming shallow. "How many more men outside?" Lena pressed. 12, maybe 15. Blood bubbled from West's lips. "Caldwell arrives. Helicopter. 20 minutes. Where are they holding the others? Ray Abbey, North Ridge, Old Ranger Station." His voice faded to a whisper. "Ellie. He has Ellie." With a final rattling breath, West was gone. Lena quickly freed Miller, supporting him as he struggled to stand. "Can you move?" she asked. Miller nodded grimly. "Been better, been worse. We have 20 minutes before Caldwell arrives, and apparently he has hostages, including the girl. Ellie." Miller's face was grim. "They grabbed her this morning, used her to get to the others." "How many captured?" "At least 3. Ray, Abby, Jack." Lena checked her weapons, mind racing through options. "We need to move, now." "There's something else," Miller added. "Something West told me during interrogation. About you." "Save it," Lena cut him off. "We need to." "Caldwell's been watching you for years," Miller pressed on. "Since Syria. This whole thing, Frontier, the development, it's all been about drawing you out." Lena froze. "What? You were never Free Sparrow. Just a bird in a different cage. One he built specially for you." The words hit Lena like a physical blow. Confirmation of the message she'd received days earlier. The surveillance photo of her cabin from 2 years ago. "Why? What does he want from me?" "Revenge," Miller said simply. "You were the only one who survived Syria. The only one who could testify about what really happened there. Which was what? Black site, illegal operation, weapons exchange with terrorists that went wrong." Miller winced as he straightened. "Caldwell was running his own side deal. When it fell apart, he sacrificed our team to cover his tracks." Lena processed this, pieces of the puzzle falling into place. "And now he's using Frontier to set up a similar operation, using the lithium mine as cover." "Exactly. And you're the loose end he never tied up." The sound of approaching footsteps cut their conversation short. Security personnel investigating the gunshot. "Exit strategy," Miller asked. Lena pointed to a narrow passage branching off from the main chamber. "Old ventilation shaft. Leads to a vertical chimney. Emerges half a mile away." "You've been busy." "I like to be prepared." "Winnie." They slipped into the passage moments before flashlight beams swept the chamber. Behind them, shouts erupted as West's body was discovered. The ventilation shaft was tight, barely wide enough for them to crawl through the air, stale and thick with dust. After 100 yards, it opened into a vertical chimney, rusted metal rungs embedded in the rock face. "Can you climb?" Lena asked, eyeing Miller's injuries. He tested his grip, wincing. "No choice." "Some." They ascended slowly, Miller gritting his teeth against the pain. Above them, a faint circle of starlight marked the exit. As they emerged into the cold night air, the sound of helicopter rotors echoed across the valley. A sleek black chopper approached from the south. Caldwell arriving for his rendezvous. "Too late for the meet and greet," Miller muttered. "But right on time for Phase 2. Lena replied, retrieving a backpack she'd hidden nearby. Inside, sat phone, first aid kit, and extra ammunition. "What's Phase 2? "Rescue our people, stop Caldwell, burn Frontier to the ground." Miller managed a grim smile. "Just another Tuesday, then." "First," Lena said, tossing him the sat phone. "Call this number. It's Ellie's contact at the Sierra Club. Tell them everything. The lithium mine, the environmental violations, the armed security. Tell them to bring every reporter, every camera they can muster. Me going public." Changing the battlefield, Lena checked her weapon. "Caldwell thrives in shadows. Let's see how he handles the spotlight." The old ranger station sat in a clearing surrounded by dense pine forest. Once a fire observation post, it had been abandoned by the Forest Service years ago due to budget cuts. Now it served a new purpose, a detention center for Frontier's security operation. Lena and Miller observed from the tree line, assessing the situation. 4 armed guards patrolled the perimeter. 2 more watched from the building's porch. A generator hummed nearby, powering lights that illuminated the clearing. Through her scope, Lena could see movement through the windows. Figures moving inside. The hostages, presumably. 6 visible, Miller murmured. Probably more inside. Plus whatever quick reaction force Caldwell can deploy from the main camp, Lena added. 10-minute response time minimum. Just or direct assault. Lena shook her head. Too risky for the hostages. Diversion. Better, but we need more than that. Lena's eyes tracked the patrol patterns. We need chaos. The plan came together quickly. A combination of Miller's experience with hostage extraction and Lena's knowledge of the terrain. They would use the approaching storm as cover striking when the weather reduced visibility and complicated Frontier's response options. As darkness deepened and the first heavy snowflakes began to fall, they put the plan into motion. Phase 1. Miller rigged a series of timed charges on the far side of the clearing, small but loud, designed to draw attention and pull security personnel away from the building. Phase 2, Lena would approach from the opposite direction using the distraction to neutralize the remaining guards and breach the building. Phase 3. Extract the hostages through a pre-planned route to the emergency rendezvous point 2 miles south where Jack's Jeep was hidden. The first charges detonated at precisely 2:17 a.m. The guards reacted as expected, 4 of them, moving toward the disturbance while 2 remained at the building. Through her night vision, Lena watched Miller engage the patrol group. Precise shots that wounded rather than killed, creating confusion without triggering a lethal response. As gunfire erupted on the eastern perimeter, Lena approached from the west. The 2 remaining guards were focused on the firefight, never sensing her approach until it was too late. Quick strikes with her rifle butt dropped them both without a sound. Inside, the situation was worse than expected. Ray, Abby, and Jack were bound to chairs in the main room, all showing signs of rough treatment. Ray's face was badly bruised, one eye swollen shut. Abby's gunshot wound had reopened, blood seeping through her bandages. Jack appeared the least injured, but was barely conscious. And there was Ellie, separated from the others, tied to a chair in the corner. A dark bruise spread across her cheek. Her eyes, when they met Lena's, were filled with a mixture of relief and terror. Standing over her was a man Lena didn't recognize. Tall, military bearing with a face carved from granite. The patch on his tactical vest identified him as Frontier Security. "About time you showed up," he said calmly, pressing a pistol to Ellie's temple. "Caldwell said you would." Lena kept her weapon raised. "Let her go." "Not how this works." The man, the commander of Frontier's security team presumably, remained impassive. "Drop your weapon or I paint the wall with her brains. You do that, you lose your only leverage. I have 3 more hostages, and I have your entire patrol team pinned down outside," Lena countered. "Sounds like we both have problems." The security commander's radio crackled. Reports from his men describing coordinated fire from multiple positions. Miller was creating the illusion of a larger attacking force. "Reinforcements are already on the way," the commander said. 2 minutes out. A lot can happen in 2 minutes. The standoff stretched, tension building. Outside, the firefight continued. Miller keeping the patrol team occupied, buying time. Ellie's eyes darted to something behind Lena, a warning. Lena caught the movement in her peripheral vision, another guard emerging from a side room. In one fluid motion, Lena dropped to one knee and fired. The guard fell, clutching his shoulder. The security commander used the distraction to pull Ellie in front of him as a human shield gun still pressed to her head. "Impressive," he acknowledged, "but futile." The sound of approaching helicopters filled the air. Frontier's reinforcements arriving. Lena needed to end this now. "Caldwell lied to you," she said, "about all of this. Save it. This isn't about a resort or even a mine. It's about covering up what happened in Syria, what Caldwell did there." Something flickered in the commander's eyes. Uncertainty. "He sacrificed an entire Special Forces team to hide his illegal weapons deals," Lena pressed. "Now he's using you the same way. Disposable assets. You don't know what you're talking about. Ask him about Operation Sandstorm. Ask him where the missing Stinger missiles went." Lena kept her voice calm, reasonable. Ask him why the CIA disavowed him after Damascus. The commander's grip on Ellie tightened. Shut up. He'll sacrifice you too, the moment you're no longer useful. Outside, the helicopter rotors grew louder. The reinforcements were landing. Last chance, Lena said. You can be a pawn in Caldwell's game, or you can walk away. For a moment, indecision wore on the commander's face. Then his expression hardened. Nice try. Before he could act, a shot rang out from behind Lena. The commander staggered backward, blood blooming on his chest. His gun discharged as he fell, the round hitting the ceiling rather than Ellie. Lena spun to find Ray's daughter Sarah in the doorway, a pistol in her hands. Her face was a mask of cold determination. They took my father, she said simply. Get Ellie. Lena ordered, already moving to free the others. We have less than a minute. Sarah rushed to Ellie while Lena cut Ray's restraints. Despite his injuries, the old man pushed himself upright. Knew you'd come, he grunted. Always. Lena moved to Abby next, then Jack. Can you all walk? Abby nodded grimly. Jack was unsteady but determined. Exit route, Sarah asked, supporting Ellie. North side, through the storage room. Lena took point, leading them through a narrow hallway. Miller's waiting with transportation. Outside, the storm had intensified, heavy snow reducing visibility to mere yards. Perfect cover for their escape. They pushed through the blizzard, half dragging the injured, while behind them, floodlights cut through the snow, as Frontier's reinforcements secured the ranger station. Miller met them at the tree line, leading them through a ravine to where Jack's Jeep and Lena's truck waited concealed under snow-covered camouflage netting. Get them to the reservation, Lena told Miller. Medical attention for Ray and Abby, then the fallback position we discussed. What about you? Miller asked. I'm ending this. Lena checked her weapons. Tonight. Not alone, Ray protested. We started this together. Your part's done, old man. Lena's voice softened. You've fought enough wars. And you haven't. He held her gaze, his one good eye fierce. Let it go, Lena. Live to fight another day. If Caldwell lives, there is no other day. She looked around at the battered group, brave people who had risked everything for their home. He'll never stop coming. Then I'm going with you, Sarah declared. No, Ray and Lena said simultaneously. This isn't a debate. Sarah's expression was as unyielding as the mountains. They tortured my father. They tried to kill Ellie. I'm in. Before Lena could argue further, Miller stepped in. The rest of you go. I'll watch her back. Reluctantly, Lena nodded. 20 minutes to get clear. Then I trigger the next phase. As the others departed in Jack's Jeep, Lena outlined her plan to Miller and Sarah. It was audacious, possibly suicidal, but if it worked. You're sure this is the only way? Miller asked. I'm sure Caldwell won't stop. Not until he's eliminated every threat to his operation? Lena zipped up her tactical vest. Not until he's eliminated me. So we're bait, Sarah concluded. I'm bait, Lena corrected. You two are the trap. The frozen lake stretched before them, a flat white expanse surrounded by towering pines. At its center, a small island rose like a fortress, the location of Frontier's primary communications hub for the northern sector. Lena had spent the previous week preparing this battlefield, planting homemade explosives beneath the ice in strategic locations, creating booby traps along likely approach routes, establishing multiple firing positions. Now, as the storm raged around them, she made her approach, deliberately visible, leaving clear tracks in the fresh snow. An invitation, a challenge. The response came within minutes. Radio chatter picked up on the frequencies they'd identified earlier. Security teams mobilizing, coordinates being transmitted, and one voice, cold and precise, directing the Operation Caldwell. Converge on the lake. His orders crackled through the scanner. All teams. I want her alive if possible. Lena positioned herself on the island in a hastily constructed blind that offered both cover and clear firing lanes across the lake. Sarah took position in the trees to the east while Miller circled to the west, creating a crossfire zone over the ice. The first security team approached cautiously, using the tree line for cover. Lena allowed them to advance, waiting until they committed to crossing the exposed ice. The shot, when she took it, was perfect, striking the ice 20 yards ahead of the lead man. Cracks spiderwebbed outward, forcing the team to retreat. I know you're listening, Caldwell. Lena spoke into the radio she'd taken from the commander. Let's finish what you started in Syria. No response, but the scanner revealed increased activity. More teams repositioning. Snipers being deployed. The second team attempted a more dispersed approach, spreading out to minimize the risk. Lena triggered one of her planted charges, sending a geyser of water and ice 30 feet into the air. The message was clear: the entire lake was mined. Any approach would be on her terms. For 20 minutes, this deadly chess game continued. Frontier's forces probing Lena, countering. Miller and Sarah remained hidden, their presence unknown to the attackers. Then the game changed. A black helicopter appeared through the swirling snow, hovering above the far shore. Even at this distance, Lena recognized the figure standing in the open door. Caldwell observing the operation personally. "Sparrow," his voice came through the radio. "Impressive as always." "Come to finish the job," Lena challenged. "Come to offer one last chance." Caldwell's tone was almost conversational. "Walk away. Disappear for real this time. I'll even provide the resources. Like you did for Rodriguez." A pause. "That was regrettable. Necessary, but regrettable. Necessary for what your weapons deals, your private slush fund. For national security." Caldwell's voice hardened. "Some operations require sacrifice." "Save the patriotism," Lena spat. "This was never about country, just your bank account." Another pause. "Perhaps, but my offer stands. Walk away from this valley, from this fight. Live out your days in peace. And the others, the people whose lives you've destroyed here, collateral damage, unavoidable in our line of work, as you well know." Lena's grip tightened on her rifle. "That's where you're wrong, Caldwell. There's always a choice. And you've made yours." His voice turned cold. "So be it." The radio went silent. Moments later, the helicopter rose higher, banking away from the lake, retreating to a safe distance. Then multiple explosions rocked the shoreline. Not Lena's charges, but artillery. Mortars impacting the tree line where Sarah was positioned. "Sarah!" Lena shouted into her comm. "Report." No response. "Miller, Sarah's position is hit. Do you have eyes?" "Negative." Miller's voice was tight. "Heavy fire on the west side, too. They're using the mortars to flush us out." Lena's mind raced. Caldwell was escalating beyond what she'd anticipated, bringing in heavy weapons, attempting to obliterate the entire area rather than capture her. "Fall back," she ordered. "Both of you. Emergency extraction route." "What about you?" Miller demanded. "I'm finishing this." Lena sighted her rifle on the distant helicopter. At this range, with these weather conditions, it was nearly an impossible shot. Nearly. She squeezed the trigger. The bullet missed the helicopter, but struck something vital: the mortar team's ammunition cache. The resulting explosion lit up the night sky, a fireball that momentarily turned snow to steam. In the confusion, Lena retreated from her position, circling toward the northeast shore, where Frontier's command post had been established. If Caldwell was coordinating from there, she was halfway across the lake when the ice beneath her feet shuddered. Not from an explosion. Something else. Something massive moving beneath the surface. The truth hit her too late. The repeated artillery impacts had weakened the ice structure across the entire lake. What had been solid enough to support multiple people was now fracturing under a single person's weight. Lena sprinted for the shore, ice cracking behind her with each step. 20 yards from safety, it gave way completely. She plunged into the frigid water, the shock driving air from her lungs. Training took over. Don't panic. Don't gasp. Surface and survive. She fought her way upward, breaking through into the howling storm. The cold was already seeping into her muscles, slowing her movements as she struggled toward the edge of the ice. A figure appeared above her, a silhouette against the swirling snow. A hand reached down. "Grab on!" Sarah alive despite the artillery barrage. Lena grasped her hand, and with surprising strength, the younger woman pulled her from the frigid water. Thanks," Lena stammered, her body already shaking violently from cold. "Now we're even," Sarah replied, helping her toward the trees. "But we need to move. Now." Caldwell, command post on the north shore. Miller's working his way there." Hypothermia was already setting in, Lena's thoughts becoming sluggish. She forced herself to focus, to keep moving. Each step a battle against her failing body. They reached the tree line as another artillery barrage hammered the lake, completely shattering the ice. The frozen battlefield was transforming into a black, deadly pool. Sarah helped Lena to a small cabin, a hunter's blind she prepared as a fallback position. Inside, emergency supplies, weighted dry clothes, chemical heat packs, a propane heater. Strip, Sarah ordered. Everything. Body heat is the priority. As Lena changed, Sarah maintained watch through a narrow window, scanning for pursuers. Miller! Lena asked, her voice stronger as warmth returned to her core. No contact since the barrage started. Sarah's expression was grim, but he knows the rendezvous point. Lena checked her weapons. The rifle was lost to the lake, but her sidearm had survived in its waterproof holster. Not ideal for what came next, but it would have to do. We need to move, she said. Before Caldwell realizes, I survived the ice. You're in no condition to fight, Sarah protested. This ends tonight. Lena loaded a fresh magazine. One way or another. Outside, the storm was beginning to slacken, the heavy snow giving way to lighter flurries. Through breaks in the clouds, moonlight illuminated the shattered landscape, a battlefield of ice and shadow. They moved through the forest like ghosts approaching Frontier's command post from the east. The position was well established, a cluster of heated tents, communications equipment, and a dozen armed guards. And in the center, the black helicopter rotors, still as it sat on an improvised landing pad. Caldwell's still here, Lena whispered. They watched for 15 minutes, analyzing patrol patterns and defensive positions. The operation was professional, disciplined. No easy vulnerabilities to exploit. Wait here, Lena finally said. Cover the north escape route. If he breaks that way, take the shot. And you? I'm going straight in. That's suicide, Sarah hissed. No. Lena's expression was cold, determined. It's justice. Before Sarah could object further, movement caught their attention. A figure approaching through the trees from the west. Miller moving with the measured pace of a man conserving strength. They signaled him forward. Thought you were dead, he grunted as he joined them. Not yet, Lena replied. Report. 6 teams sweeping the area. They think you drowned in the lake. Good. Gives us the element of surprise. Lena outlined her plan. Simple, direct, and incredibly dangerous. There has to be another way, Sarah argued. There isn't, Miller countered, understanding in his eyes. Not with Caldwell. The 3 separated, moving into position. Miller would create a diversion at the fuel depot. Sarah would eliminate the perimeter guards on the east side. Lena would penetrate the command center itself and find Caldwell. The operation began with an explosion as Miller detonated the fuel reserves. Flames leapt skyward, drawing security personnel away from their posts. In the chaos, Sarah methodically neutralized 3 guards, creating an entry point. Lena slipped through the gap, moving from shadow to shadow until she reached the main command tent. Inside, voices argued strategy, whether to continue the search or assume Lena had perished in the freezing lake. And one voice rose above the others. Calm, authoritative, familiar. Confirm the body, Caldwell ordered. I want visual verification. The ice is completely broken up, someone protested. Recovery would take days in these conditions. Then we stay until it's done, Caldwell insisted. This isn't over until I see her corpse. Lena positioned herself at the tent entrance, pistol ready. 1 shot. That's all she needed. End Caldwell, end the threat to the valley, to her people, to herself. She was about to move when a commotion erupted on the opposite side of the camp. Gunfire shouts. Sarah's position had been compromised. Inside the tent, Caldwell was already moving. Get the helicopter ready, we're leaving. Lena had seconds to decide. Take the shot now at greater risk to herself, or retreat and regroup. The memory of Rodriguez face down in the Syrian sand made the decision for her. She burst into the tent, weapon raised. Hello, Caldwell? 5 men inside, all armed, all reaching for weapons. Lena fired twice. 2 guards down before they could draw. The others froze. Caldwell stood at the far end beside a communications array. His expression showed neither fear nor surprise, just cold calculation. Sparrow, he acknowledged, resilient as always. It's over, Lena said, keeping her pistol trained on his chest. Call off your men, now, or what, you'll shoot me. Caldwell's smile was thin. Then my replacement continues the operation. Frontier has too much invested to walk away. Not after the evidence we've gathered, the environmental violations, the illegal security force, the attempted murders. Evidence requires witnesses, Caldwell countered. Living witnesses. The threat hung in the air between them. Why Syria? Lena demanded. Why sacrifice our team? Expedience. Caldwell's voice was matter-of-fact. The weapons deal went sideways. Exposure would have been problematic. Your team knew too much. So you set us up to die. A regrettable necessity. He studied her, though you've proven surprisingly difficult to eliminate. And the lithium mine, the resort, simply business, extraordinarily profitable business. Caldwell gestured dismissively. This valley sits on a fortune. The fact that you happen to be here, a convenient coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences. No, Caldwell smiled thinly. Perhaps not. Perhaps I've been watching you longer than you realize. Perhaps this entire scenario was designed not just to secure the lithium, but to draw you out. To finish what began in Syria. You're insane. I'm thorough, he corrected. Loose ends offend me. Outside, the gunfire intensified. Sarah and Miller were running out of time. Your people are dying out there, Caldwell observed. For you, again. Lena steadied her aim. Last chance. Call them off. Or what you'll execute me, become exactly what you claim to despise. Caldwell's smile widened slightly. We both know you won't do it. Not in cold blood. Not without direct threat. He was right. Despite everything, despite knowing what he'd done, what he would continue to do, Lena hesitated. The soldier in her demanded adherence to rules of engagement. The human in her recoiled from execution. Caldwell saw the hesitation and moved, reaching beneath the communications table. Not for a weapon, for a detonator. Insurance policy, he explained, holding up the device. Charges placed throughout your friends' positions. One press and they all die. Now Lena had justification. Direct threat to others. Her finger tightened on the trigger. Caldwell anticipated it. Dead man's switch, he warned. If I die, it triggers automatically. A standoff. Impossible choices. What do you want? Lena asked finally. Safe passage. For myself in the helicopter. Caldwell gestured to the detonator. Once I'm airborne, I'll dispose of this over the lake. Your friends live. I disappear. And then we both know I'll return eventually, and we'll finish this game. His eyes were cold. Some conflicts can only end one way, Sparrow. Lena knew he was right. This man would never stop hunting her, never stop destroying everything and everyone she cared about. Decide, Caldwell pressed, your pride or their lives. The seconds stretched, tension building. Outside, the gunfire had stopped. Either her allies had prevailed or they'd been captured. Lena lowered her weapon slightly. Go. Caldwell nodded, unsurprised. The moral choice. Predictable. He backed toward the exit detonator, still raised. Don't follow. Don't pursue. Or next time, I won't offer mercy. As he reached the tent flap, a single shot rang out. Caldwell staggered the detonator, falling from suddenly nerveless fingers. Behind him stood Miller, rifle raised, expression grim. Dead man's switch was a bluff, he said simply. No such technology in a field operation. Caldwell clutched at his chest, blood seeping between his fingers. His eyes, wide with shock, found Lena's. You can't, he gasped. I didn't, Lena replied, moving forward to kick the fallen detonator away. But he did. Finish it, Miller urged. End this. Lena stood over Caldwell, pistol aimed at his head. Everything in her training, her experience, demanded she take the shot. Clean, final, safe. Instead, she knelt beside him. You're going to stand trial, she said quietly. For Syria, for everything. The world will know what you've done. Kill me, Caldwell whispered, blood bubbling from his lips. Cleaner. No? Lena holstered her weapon. That's the difference between us. Caldwell's laugh turned into a cough, spraying blood. Still, the good soldier. His hand moved suddenly, drawing a concealed blade from his boot. The thrust was weak but determined, aimed at Lena's throat. She caught his wrist, deflecting the blade downward. It sank into his own thigh. Caldwell's scream echoed through the tent. Outside voices approached, security personnel responding to the gunshot. "Time to go," Miller urged, grabbing Lena's arm. "He's not worth dying for." Lena hesitated, then nodded. Justice would come, but not today. Not here. They slipped out the back of the tent as Frontier's security team breached the front. In the confusion, they made their way to the extraction point where Sarah waited with a stolen snowmobile. Behind them, the command post erupted in chaos. Orders shouted, men scrambling to save their wounded leader. But Lena knew with cold certainty that Caldwell would survive. Men like him always did. This chapter might be ending, but their story wasn't over. As they sped away into the night, Lena looked back one last time at the valley she'd fought to protect. At the price paid. At the blood spilled on ice. Some victories felt like defeat. 1 year later, the Pine Ridge Rescue Station stood rebuilt on its original foundation. The sign above the door, hand-carved from local timber, read simply, "To those who fought not for medals, but for each other." Lena sat on the porch watching spring sunlight filter through pine branches. Her left eye, permanently damaged during the final confrontation with Frontier's forces, was covered with a black patch. The wounds had healed mostly. The memories never would. Ray approached, leaning heavily on a cane. The fight had cost him his right leg below the knee, but not his spirit. "Reporters are back," he said, lowering himself onto the bench beside her. "From that environmental magazine. Want to talk about the battle for Pine Ridge Valley?" "Tell them what you always do," Lena replied. Ray nodded. No comment. The aftermath had unfolded largely as they'd hoped. The evidence Ellie had gathered, combined with testimonies from local officials brave enough to speak out, had triggered federal investigations. Frontier Holdings had collapsed under the scrutiny, its stock worthless, its executives facing charges. The lithium remained in the ground, at least for now. The valley remained unspoiled. Caldwell had disappeared from the hospital where he'd been treated, vanished before federal agents could take him into custody. Somewhere out there, he was rebuilding, planning, waiting. Lena knew their paths would cross again eventually. Some enemies were forever. Miller had returned to his quiet retirement in Idaho, but stayed in regular contact. Sarah had joined a wilderness protection group using her newly discovered talents to defend other threatened lands. Jack had been elected mayor in the special election following the scandal. Abby led efforts to secure permanent protected status for the valley, working with federal agencies to recognize the indigenous claims to the sacred sites. And Lena remained, watching, waiting, healing in her own way. "They're saying it might snow tonight," Ray commented, gazing at the distant mountains. "Late for April. Winter's reluctant to leave this year." "Like memories," Ray observed. "Some seasons stay with us longer than others." Lena nodded, understanding in her silence. As dusk approached, she walked alone into the forest, following a familiar path to the ridge overlooking the valley. Fresh pine needles cushioned her steps. Somewhere nearby, an owl called, the day's first hunter awakening. At the ridge, she paused, breathing in the clean, cold air. This place had broken her, then remade her. Shown her what remained when everything else was stripped away. A movement caught her attention, a shadow separating from the trees. A wolf, gray and lean, watching her with intelligent eyes. One of the packs she'd observed over the years but never approached. The wolf made no sound, showed no fear. Simply regarded her as an equal predator in the dying light. Lena stood perfectly still, respecting the moment. Neither threat nor retreat, just acknowledgement between survivors. After a long moment, the wolf turned, vanishing into the gathering darkness. Lena remained, watching the sun sink behind distant peaks, casting the valley in shades of purple and gold. No words were needed, no explanations or justifications, just the mountains and the forest and the wild things that called them home, including her. The mountains stand silent, unchanged by the blood spilled across their slopes. Snow melts, ice cracks, and the valley begins to heal, just as wounds become scars, pain dulled but never forgotten. They said I was fighting for land, for trees and water and ancient burial grounds, and perhaps that was true. But in the end, I was fighting for something more elusive, the right to stop running, to face what hunts you, to make peace with the predator within. This valley cost us dearly. Ray's leg, Miller's faith, my eye. But it gave us something too, a place to plant our ghosts where they might finally rest. I wonder sometimes about Caldwell moving through shadows half a world away. Whether he understands what we defended wasn't just soil and stone, but the last untamed corners of ourselves. The wolf visits the ridge some evenings, watching from a respectful distance. Neither of us approaches, neither retreats. We simply acknowledge what we recognize in each other, survivors carrying the wilderness inside us, even as the world tries to fence it in. And perhaps that's all any of us can hope for in the end. Not victory, not redemption, but the quiet dignity of standing our ground against the coming night. Some battles aren't meant to end. They just change with the seasons.